Video is going to quickly summarize what Install Doctor is, what Megabyte Labs is, and more specifically integrating trunk.io into our stack. So we'll start off with Install Doctor. Install Doctor is one of our projects, and it's at install.doctor. That's the homepage name, and basically it's a provisioning system that sets up desktops. There's not a lot of full-featured desktop setup frameworks that just set up everything perfectly from the get-go. So, for instance, one of the things that we want integrated into our systems when we deploy them, or anyone that wants to use Install Doctor to provision their desktop, is like a nice terminal experience. So you can see we have like auto completion. This is like, you know, there's just tons of different plugins that improve the terminal experience. And then also Install Doctor, you know, most of the provisioning process is from installing a configurable list of software, and you could define the definitions in such a way that you can support all these different operating systems and bring them to a similar state from a single configuration without adding a lot of code. It's all focused on reducing the amount of code required to deploy to all these different things. Yeah, and so there's more on it right here. If you want to read more about Install Doctor, you could go to the website or check out the repository on GitHub. It's basically a .files project that does a lot of other stuff, like running scripts that, you know, automatically install Chrome plugins, just tons of stuff. So that's my current project. I'm a principal software engineer. I've been working on the computer for like 20 years, and Install Doctor has been about the past 5 years. I've just gathered a lot of cool tools on GitHub, and I'll show you exactly how I'm doing that. So basically I went to GitHub and I found I'm not sure if you're familiar with awesome lists, but awesome lists are just README file repositories that contain lists of all the best software for a given category. So I wrote up a little app that basically goes through all the awesome lists I could find, and then it'll scrape stuff like stars, forks. It'll show you the list, so that this list we're looking at is all command line apps, but you can just clear the filter here and you'll see tons of stuff. There's 41,000 repositories that I'm currently monitoring, and what I do is I'll sort them by the most amount of stars, and then whichever software has the most amount of stars for any given category. Like, so we can just go here. So Atom. So if I don't personally use Atom, but Atom has 59,000 stars, but you could see VS Code, just the browser version of it, only has has 60,000. I'm sure Visual Studio Code is up somewhere higher in this list. So anyway, in that case I would not use Atom, and I use VS Code, and I've done that for about like 900 different utilities and plugins and all that. That's all managed by Install Doctor, and you can run it. You could run Install Doctor using a single command that will walk you through the process. You don't have to do this. I'm just quickly explaining what this work item involves improving. So basically, if you wanted to run this on a fresh installation of like a VM, be my guest. But if not, that's not a requirement to use these utilities. I just think they're really useful, and you can find out more information about the umbrella company, which is a startup, open source startup that I've worked with a handful of really talented people on developing the ecosystem required for developing basically open source developer tools that are really easy to use and look nice and are secure. As you can tell, if you don't know what Cubes is, I'd recommend looking into it, and that's one of the things we are supporting. Anyway, so Megabyte Labs is the umbrella corporation, and for Megabyte Labs, I'm trying to switch to an approach where basically almost all the code will be hosted inside of this mono-repo, which is just, you could see it was just committed yesterday, like a proof of concept that integrates some of my website stuff into a mono-repo, but I plan on moving as much as possible into a single repository, as long as there's you know, obviously some things will have their own repository, like install doctor, because install doctor, if you want to customize it, the way you do it is you fork it, and then you could say delete a list of software that you don't like in the repository, and then, you know, you can provision your computers like that. Anyway, so this is where I created the issue that I'd like you to work on, and basically that involves taking a deep dive into trunk.io. This should be pretty easy. It probably won't take too much time, but trunk.io, it's basically a wrapper for linters and auto fixers, and it simplifies a lot of the headaches of linting and auto fixing. You know, when you type git commit, before you actually commit, it'll like check if you install the git hooks. And anyway, so you can see, so this is a little malformed. Let me just edit this real quick. Let's get rid of this. Let's actually just do this. So I typed up these requirements a while ago. They're like an idea, it's to give you a better idea of what I'm looking for. For instance, like these are all the plugins that I would like you to set up properly, and for them to work with configurations I've already created in different projects. Those different projects, for instance, ESLint, this ESLint configuration is what I use for all my projects, and this is actually the most elaborate example, and you don't have to well, let's see. So you can see here's an ESLint config, and then if you go into the package JSON file, you can see these are all the plugins I'm using, which is a lot of plugins, and there's a reason why I'm showing you this in particular. But basically, trunk.io, actually, okay, so before we cover ESLint, I'll first show you how trunk.io works. So after you run brew install, maybe you know, there's some command you could find on the trunk website of how to install trunk, but after you run brew install trunk, then you can run trunk init on a project that hasn't been initialized yet, and I'll just show you exactly what trunk does. So at first it scans the whole project, and it figures out which which types of linters are required. I guess right now it's actually downloading Python, Go, and Node. So it's going to scan that first. And trunk is nice because if you run trunk init, you could run that on CI and locally. It just simplifies the whole process of making sure everything's set up and that everything can be linted with all these different linters and auto fixers. Okay, so anyway, so while that finishes downloading, shouldn't take too much more time, we can go to the trunk website. So we can start off at the home page. Trunk is really great, has a lot of features that you could see on the home page. Just so you know, in case you're thinking about using it in your own projects, it's not completely open source, but its free offering is awesome. And if I ever decide to, you know, go for like some of their more advanced features, like, you know, do like scanning more than 100 PRs or checking more than 100,000 files, then I would upgrade. But anyway, so let's go to the documentation and I'll show you what I want you to do. So basically, you really have to go through all this, like everything, apart from, you know, administration, because we're sticking with the free edition right now. And then basically you got to go through most of this, but it's a pretty easy read. You like all the pages are just like a couple sections. But here's one way you could install trunk if you don't have homebrew on your machine. But basically, if you run trunk init in any of your repositories, it should automatically set up everything and do everything for you, which is cool. There's one line to get started. But anyway, this work item involves creating a custom configuration that basically can be used on this mono repository, Megabyte Labs /Megabyte Labs, but I also want it to be portable to other repositories without having it, you know, for instance, run Rust formatters on, you know, an NPM package. But at the same time, the configuration needs to integrate all the different configurations that I've made in the past, like this ESLint shared config, and then prettier, like the prettier configuration that I have is just called prettier config sexy mode. And there's more details about how those are stored at the bottom of this issue. So for instance, you know, so for prettier, if we open up this link I referenced to, and then we search for prettier. Oh, okay, so this might be a bad example because there's so many. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, you can see in this package JSON, the package JSON defines this NPM package, which is like a reference to itself in this case, and then it uses that NPM package. So that's one of the things that I haven't, you know, taken a deep dive into trunk and figured out. If trunk doesn't support the NPM packages, then you should update me on that. And then if it's easy enough to convert into, you know, the trunk.yaml file, then we could just move the code over there. But actually, most of these NPM packages require some specific code. Like for instance, in the case of prettier, we have, you know, all these definitions. So I guess technically we could probably just move the prettier package, but for the ESLint one, there is like some JavaScript, like custom JavaScript code that needs that basically requires that we use an npm package.json definition, and I like that because it's so to maintain backwards compatibility, so people could run ESLint and lint their code, or they can run the trunk thing. And then there's just like on the ticket, there's just a bunch of requirements to give you a better idea of what I'm looking for. Most of these features should already be baked into trunk, so already baked into trunk, all these. And then for HTML hint, for instance, we can go back to the trunk website, and then let's see. So, you know, this work item just entails going through all this documentation, implementing what makes sense, and, you know, also when you're doing this, keep in mind, like I'm looking for ways to improve the whole development process. So if there's anything you find that we could use to potentially make the linting even better, then please do that. And I would like, so for the custom linter, we're going to need to run HTML hints when there's HTML files, and you would do that by using the custom linter definition over here. Yeah, so I would just, yeah, I would do that. Yeah, okay, so also for custom parsers, I'd like you to just include one example of how to do this, and that's fine. So for the parser, I'd like to know how to, or it doesn't even have to be a parser, it could be a linter too, but I would like a definition of a custom linter that can do auto fixing. So a custom auto fixer. So the custom regular linter would be the HTML hint that we got to incorporate, and then we got to figure out how to create an example of a linter that can auto fix too. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And you could see so Git hooks are another thing we want to incorporate. Yeah, so it looks like, yeah, you might have to add the definition for that, but or you could just run this beforehand, and you'll see the trunk.yaml get updated to include, you know, Git hook definitions. But basically, trunk should incorporate the Git hooks. And if you can figure out a way of adding other scripts that run on these Git hooks, I would like to know that, because I already have Git hooks set up. And then I haven't even checked out the notifications, but this is cool. I'll look into this later. This is not required for now. My main concern is just getting the trunk.yaml formatted so that all the requirements here are incorporated. And also another thing is, I don't want, so I'd like trunk to still scan and auto enable like the Rust format, the Rust formatter, or even a Java one. Like Java is not included here. So the ones I'm focusing on are Python, Rust, shell scripts, Docker files, Go, and JavaScript stuff. So, and then even Ansible. But those are the ones I'm focusing on. So like if you do all that, it'll be complete. But I'd also like Rust to auto enable like other things. Like if there's Java files, then it should auto enable the Java file linter. But I think it already does that automatically. All right, so all the requirements should be there. This is going to help us maintain better code for install.doctor and all the other utilities that Megabyte Labs is pretty much about to publish. A lot of work has gone into this. Yeah, so, and just to reiterate, the ESLint plugin here, we might even be able to see the code here. Yeah, so ESLint, you could see there's just like tons of like different scripts involved with the ESLint library. But if you checked the trunk.io documentation website under supported linters, you can see if you look for ESLint, it says you have to include the plugins over here like this. I'm pretty sure. So you can do this by adding ESLint config prettier package. Yeah, so anyway, we have to figure out how to include that package as like a shared config. So it looks like right here, ESLint dash recommended, that's a shared config. Like the ESLint section might just be as simple as adding one shared library here. Yeah, so and we could go back to trunk, so you could see like just by typing trunk init, it installs a bunch of different linters because it found all these different types of code. And then you can, like, does it want you to manage git hooks? And we'll do yes. Run trunk format, yes. Run trunk. So it'll check before pushing. And then here you could see it running, and it runs it all in parallel. It's super awesome. It just takes out all the headaches of doing git hooks and linters. So there we go. All right. Okay. So that should pretty much be everything. The first stage of this project will just be to get trunk.io working with all the different configurations that are listed in the ticket. But then the next phase of this project will include moving over all these different configurations into this shared repository. Not this one, but the Megabyte Labs. So, and that, you know, that might take anywhere from, like, you know, 4 to 8 hours for the second phase, and I'm not sure how long it'll take to make the trunk configuration. That might be another, it might take 4 to 8 hours. I don't know, but it's definitely worth learning trunk because it's the latest and the greatest right now in terms of auto fixing and linting code. It's like really brand new, and it has a Visual Studio Code plugin. That's how I found it. It was just like a trending new repository, and I loved it. So that's all. Thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you decide to pursue this work item and help out Megabyte Labs with Install Doctor. All right. Thank you very much.